Sometimes making a soup is exactly what's needed, especially if it's a dark and dreary day, but it's so often just so easy to get sort of bogged down in your mind and say, oh, what kind of soup should I make? Well, soups don't have to be complicated. I want to make this rather simple soup today. It's a Turkish-style soup, so it adds maybe some new flavors for you, but it's also not difficult to make, and that's the most important part. It's just really using red lentils, which we have here. It's cooking it in a little bit of broth, seasoning and adding the vegetables a little bit later, which we'll go through that process, and then adding a little bit of tomato paste that's been seasoned up. Obviously, if you're living close to a Turkish store, it's really helpful to get a little bit of spicy Turkish red paste. But if you don't have access to that, just spicing up your tomato paste will work just fine. So, why don't we just get started? It's a really simple soup to get going. First thing we want to do is go ahead and get our broth heated up. So once your broth is heated here, it's just simply a matter of go ahead and adding your red lentils to the hot broth. And just keep everything moving. It's real critical to keep the broth moving at this point because it's really easy for the broth or for the lentils to float down to the bottom of the pan and then burn, and that's obviously what we don't want to do. Great. So as the lentils are cooking here, you can kind of see on the side of the pan this sort of white, scummy kind of stuff that comes out of the lentils. That just needs to just be scooped out. It's really rather quick. You don't have to do it too long, just a few minutes, and that will get most of them out. A lot of times when you're making a lentil soup, or any soup for that matter, you begin the soup process by sort of sweating your vegetables and adding spices to it. This is really important, especially in Indian-style lentil soups. However, we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to cook the vegetables separately in a pan, add the spices to the vegetables, and about halfway through the process of cooking the lentils, we'll add those spicy cooked vegetables into the soup. This, I think, really works better with a red lentil soup because it helps absorb everything in a cooked fashion rather than having that sort of raw vegetable taste that may occur if you're doing it beforehand. So we're going to do the vegetables without any sort of fat whatsoever in the pan. So we've got our pan nice and warm. We're going to get our vegetables right in there. You should hear an instant sizzle. That's about good right there. And you want to, if you're cooking it without oil, you want to just stir it around fairly rapidly. Get some salt into the vegetables fairly early on. This will help draw out any moisture. And the moisture is actually quite important because it keeps the vegetables from sticking on the pan. Just keep it moving around. You can do this over a medium-high heat. And the idea here is to continue cooking everything until the vegetables soften quite a bit. Once we get the process started, just go ahead and add a little bit of spice. In this case, we're going to use a little bit of a spicy curry. Just gives it a little bit of a background flavor. It's not an Indian-style curry soup, so you don't need to put a lot of curry in there. Keep everything moving around. And while you're doing that, just make sure you give your lentils a little bit of a stir every once in a while. And the final part is this process here, and we have our tomato paste. If you're using a red pepper paste, go ahead and mix it with the tomato paste at this point. We've added some spice. We've added a little cayenne pepper just to give it a little bit of a punch. A little tickle in the throat is what I like to say. And we're going to just add just enough water to loosen that up a bit. And as soon as those vegetables are done, we'll add this paste along with the vegetables into the red lentils. And that's going to be pretty much the process. As your vegetables continue to cook here, you have to kind of keep an eye on them so that they're not going to stick. What sometimes might be necessary, just give it just a little bit of water, just enough really to prevent them from sticking on the bottom of the pan. Keep everything moving around. And just let those cook away. They'll take about 5 to 8 minutes or so. And meanwhile, our lentils are continuing to cook here. You can see how they're really breaking down. They've changed that color. And the whole soup is getting thick here. This is the indication that we're getting close to adding the vegetables and the tomato paste and finishing up the soup. This is really what we're looking for. Good. So let's have just a little check on our vegetables. They taste really good. What you're looking for is the vegetables should be soft. There should be no raw flavor involved. Just maybe a slight little crunch still left in the vegetable. That's just about perfect then to go ahead and add to the soup. Okay, when we're ready here, just give your soup a little bit of a stir. Get all of these vegetables in here at once. Make sure you stir everything. Now at this point, the soup may get a little bit too thick, but that's okay. You can always add a little bit of water just to loosen it up again. Thick is okay in this particular case, and what's nice is you can control the consistency you really want at the end. Okay, once those vegetables are in there, we'll go ahead and get all this paste in there that we created. And this brings not only a lot of flavor, but it'll bring the color back to the soup. So when we puree it at the end, we're going to be left with a soup that's a little bit more red than if we didn't do this, and then it would be sort of a kind of a pale brown, brownish yellow soup, which isn't too attractive. So that's it really. All we have to do now is just let this continue to cook for 10-15 minutes until everything easily breaks down, and then we just puree it and you have your soup ready. Right, the soup looks really, really good here at this point. It's taken on a rich red color, and the way that we're going to check to see if it's done is if you just gently take your spoon and smash it against the side, you should be able to see the vegetables and lentils just easily just disintegrating. And that's the indication that your soup is done. Now you can keep it this way if you want a little bit of a rustic soup, or if you prefer, you can do what I like to do and prefer, and that's go ahead and puree it. And I just use a little hand pureer. Right, that looks good to me. It's not, as you can see, it's not velvety smooth, but it's nice and smooth. It has a little bit of structure. And if you're happy with this consistency, you can go ahead and serve it as is. Or if you want to thin it out, you can just merely add just a little bit of water to the point where you think that's enough for you. And that's looking really, really good to me. So I think we're ready to serve this up now. So we're going to go ahead, get our bowl, grab a little ladle. It's really simple soup and just tastes delicious. You'll get an idea here of how thick it is. And I like to keep it a little bit on the thicker side. That looks good. So what I like to do at this point, I just give it a little bit of chopped up parsley. Parsley in Turkish food are just like this. Everything in the Turkish kitchen has parsley in it. I give it just a little bit of soya yogurt. You can just give it a little swirl, makes it look nice. And if you'd like, you can add a little bit of oil, whether it's flaxseed oil or olive oil at this point is up to you, but just a little bit on the top, just to give it a nice look and a nice sheen. And there you have it. It's our Turkish red lentil soup, and all we need to do now is just eat it.